Hello, what's going on, everybody?
Hi.
Welcome to the Core Podcast, episode 46. And today we got Richard Doyle with us. Richard's kind of a legend with user groups, especially around the SOLIDWORKS User Group Network, and now doing the Onshape User Group stuff. Just the user group guy is the best way to call you. How you doing, Richard?
Pretty good, guys. Good to see you, Kirby. Jonny, first time we've met, and it's a pleasure. Yeah, the user group guy. I forget who gave me that moniker. It was probably several people that had mentioned it to me, and it just kind of stuck. I think I remember somebody recommending the Swuggen dude at one point. I thought that was kind of cool, but I didn't think it was very engineering-like. So the user group guy kind of stuck. That's my social media handle. I'm very proud of it. I'm proud of the work that I've done over the last 20 years. So I don't mind being referred to that at all.
I mean, a lot of what you've built still around for Swuggen. I mean, Johnny's.
Well, sure, and I mean, and absolutely, that has a lot to do with the people that are running the groups and the support that they're getting, from the corporation. It never really was about me. I mean, I guess I had the energy behind me to go out and try to help these people as best I could. But honestly, the user groups were a success because of the people that were running the individual groups. I love how they all came together. They worked together. It's just a fabulous bunch of people.
I mean, I always find that when I first moved to London, first thing I wanted to do was find a kind of a group of SOLIDWORKS users. And I looked and there was nothing there. And I just left it at that until I met you.
Yep.
And I said, I wish there was one near me. And your straight answer was, so why don't you do it?
Yeah, and that that happened dozens and dozens of times. I used to make a joke out of that as soon as you expressed an interest in a user group, I had you right there.
Yeah.
And all I had to do was just a little bit of convincing and to convince you that you had the support behind you and that you could really make this work. So I think that was my magic power. Was getting people excited about doing it and helping them along the way. So
I think having the opportunity to hang out with other leaders and other people that are very involved in the community gets you really amped up too.
Yep.
And the kind of events and stuff that you guys would put together from corporate to get them together and get them inspired and excited.
Well, and not only corporate, but the users stepped up and did a lot of things themselves. In fact, I wasn't perfect during my run with the SOLIDWORKS User Group Network. I did make some mistakes. One of them was what they called NESWUC, right? The Northeast SOLIDWORKS User Group Conference. When they came to me with that idea, I thought it was a bad idea. I thought it was too much work for them. Didn't think it would work out, and boy, was I wrong there. In fact, I ended up attending a couple of those events, and they were fantastic. SWGLY, the annual SOLIDWORKS User Group User Group meeting of the year. That's been going on now for 7 or 8 years.
They're doing 7. 7 is in September.
Yeah, and when Todd Blacksher, presented that idea to me, I looked at him and told him he was crazy. You'll never be able to pull something like that off. And sure enough, I was wrong again. So, a lot of times you just have to sit back and listen to what the group leaders want to do, what they think is best for their group members and for the community, and then give them the support that they need to do it. I'm glad those events all turned out well, and I don't mind to admit being wrong about them. I guess one more. I got to mention one more. The SOLIDWORKS on a stick debacle. I don't know if you guys remember, but probably 15, 16 years ago now, they came out with a thumb drive that had a full-blown version of SOLIDWORKS on it. You just plugged it into your USB connector, and you could launch SOLIDWORKS and run SOLIDWORKS right from that USB stick. They were very popular. They were great giveaways, and mostly went to people that attended kind of sales kind of conferences and things like that. And so the marketing department said, hey, here's a great idea. Why don't you run a Bring a Prospect event at your user group meetings, and we'll give everybody one of these SOLIDWORKS on a stick. And, I fought long against marketing being in user groups whatsoever. But that SOLIDWORKS on a stick thing, I think, was the hook that got me. I thought people would really like that. And so, I contacted a couple of group leaders privately and asked them if they'd be willing to, to do something like this as kind of a test. And they agreed to it. And then so I posted it in the forums. We had a special section for our group leaders, and I posted it up there. And the response was, let's say, underwhelming. I remember a man I have so much respect for, a longtime user group leader, Gerald Davis out of Colorado. He said he simply sent me a message that said, if this event goes through, you can accept my resignation as a group leader. And they got it too. I mean, marketing doesn't really belong in user group meetings. You're not there to sell people anything. You're there to to teach people stuff. And there's no, prospects are absolutely welcome at user group meetings to come in and take a look, but you're not going to entice them to the detriment of what's supposed to be happening at that meeting. So three really bad things that I did in my 15 or 16 years that I'll always regret. But looking back, people make mistakes. So I think I did a lot of good things too. So kind of even.
Got plenty. I mean, John Matrician has joined us now.
I see him. Hello, well. John.
Brandon in there as well. Thank you for joining us. I mean, I think this is a good place to do our little segment of what are we drinking tonight. So I'm going to play a little video. Has a jingle to it. Let's go.
Kirby.
Shing. What are they drinking? I forgot the jazz.
That's still the best jingle we've made.
Richard, since you're our guest, I'm going to ask you, what are you drinking tonight?
All right. Well, I'm in Las Vegas, Nevada. So, when I logged in here, it was before noon. So no alcohol for me today. But I've got some white grape juice. This is the Welch's brand, one of my favorites, and very refreshing.
It must be quite warm there. I'm just enjoying some old Jack Daniels because it is 8 in the evening.
I'm shocked, Kirby, that you've got Jack Daniels. It's not like you at all.
What?
That's, if I had a choice of sipping whiskeys, Jack Daniels is my favorite. And I think, if the SOLIDWORKS people that are watching the show remember, Fireball is my absolute favorite, but only once a year.
I mean, like, with all the user group stuff that you do and that, you've obviously traveled to many, many cities. You ever been to Nashville?
Oh, absolutely. Yep. In fact, I got to tour the Gibson Guitar Factory in Nashville. And, I got to do a lot of great tours, plant tours when I was with the User Group Network. And I always wanted to take pictures, obviously, but some places wouldn't allow it, some places would. And I was so excited when I turned to the guy that was about to start the tour at the Guitar Factory. I said, "Can I take pictures?" He said, "You can take any picture you want anywhere in this plant." And so I must have taken, with my phone, took 100 pictures. Took a picture. There was a gentleman in a paint booth, and he was doing a custom paint job on a guitar. Big burly fella, just looked like a craftsman. He just kind of had that look and that attitude to him. And so I approached him while he was working there, and I put my phone up. I said, "Do you mind if I take a picture?" And he turned around, he held the guitar up, and he said, "Hell no, go ahead." And so that's one of my favorite pictures that I took. So just an amazing factory too. Every single guitar that they put through there, this is, according to what they were telling us, every single guitar that goes through there is touched by about 12 different craftsmen at some point. But there's an awful lot of automation that goes into that. So a lot of all the blanks are all cut on CNC machines, fully automated until it gets down to the real craft work. And that's when the human hands start to take over. So it was fascinating. We got to see how a guitar is made from start to finish. And at the end of that meeting, Gibson actually gave away a guitar to one of the attendees. So,
oh, wow.
I remember that meeting fondly, one of my favorites. Nashville. You mentioned London and the London User Group. That was also one of my favorite trips. Come over there to England and visit that group. I got to wear the Kylo Ren mask.
Of Luke's, yeah.
At one point, Luke Daly. In fact, I was showing the Millennium Falcon website to a couple of folks today. It just it popped in my head. I started thinking Kirby, then I started thinking England, then I started thinking Luke, and I thought, hey, I wonder what's going on with that Millennium Falcon. So
yeah, it's been in storage for years.
Yeah.
I think Luke's going to, because Star Wars Celebration is in London next year.
Yeah.
I think Luke's going to try and see if he can get it out for that.
Amazing piece of work. The people I showed it to, just like I say, the website, they were just blown away by that. So
really epic product. You're talking about how like the Gibson factory has 12 people that basically touch every guitar. So when we were in Nashville, Jonny and I went off to the Jack Daniel's Museum factory out in Lynchburg, which was really awesome. And to make the charcoal to filter the whiskey, they burn a pine wood in these big fires. Whenever you see a Jack Daniel's advert or something, you see these big fires. Those fires are generated by 2 people. So every drop of Jack Daniel's goes through the coal that's produced by 2 people.
Wow.
And it was just fascinating because I always thought that Jack Daniel's was made all over the world and all that. Every bottle comes from that specific fountain out of the mountains, comes from that factory.
I actually had a chance on one of my trips to stop by there and missed the chance. I didn't take the chance. I drove almost right by the thing. And when you're traveling in between meetings, and you want to see things, you want to do things, but at the same time you want to get to where you're going next.
Yep.
It took me a long time to try to settle down when I was traveling and actually see things. In fact, it took the trips to Europe really to do that. Because I was, so fascinated by, the new cultures, the new architecture, and I felt like I really had to get out and see it. I did the hop on, hop off tour of London, and did an awful lot of walking around. Did the same. I did an accidental tour of Liverpool one year. I was doing a presentation up at the university there, John Muir's University, I think it's called. And left my hotel, which is right across from the train station there, and had my trusty iPhone out, looking at my Google Maps, and started following the path to the university. And I got up to an area where there were a lot of buildings that looked like a university, but I couldn't find any open doors. I couldn't find any place to go in. Finally found an open door, and it was just a small little office. Kind of had a receptionist up front there. And I asked her, I said, "Can you tell me how to get to so-and-so building?" And she just looked at me with a look on her face and sighed, said, "Oh, honey, you walked to the wrong side of town. You have to go way over there." So I ended up doing a whole loop around Liverpool to get back to the university. So
get those extra steps in.
Yep. We did. It didn't involve a user group meeting, but one of my other favorite trips was the same kind of thing: hop on, hop off tour of Paris, and I did that with Rachel York, one of my favorite people, and one of the best people I've ever worked with in my entire career. And we had a day off before we had some events to do over there. So we did the whole thing. We had 5 different weather events happen to us that day. We had a little bit of sleet and some snow, and we had sun, and we had rain, and we had just kind of a cloudy thing. We had a wonderful time, and I just loved hanging out with Rachel. I think you guys know she's just cool.
She's good people. She knows how to drink as well.
She fits in well with us.
Yep.
But I mean, you've been doing this user group thing for a long time, so you really understand kind of how important it is for communities and users to kind of have a place to get together. And speaking of Rachel York, she's in there. She's in the chat. Suited and booted in Paris. Best day ever.
Yep, that was a great day. Absolutely. All right, Rachel, good to see you here. I mean, I didn't start my career in user groups. I was a mechanical designer for a long time until 1999. So it goes back a long way. I feel really old right now. Somebody suggested that I start a user group, and I honestly, I had never been to a user group meeting. I didn't know really what a user group was, but it sounded like a great idea. Bring a whole bunch of people together, have some presentations, eat some food, sit and chat, get to know each other, and learn some stuff. I thought, well, how hard could that be? And, that first meeting went so well. And some of the follow-ups that I got, a guy got a job at that first meeting. He had just been laid off, and he got a job because he happened to be sitting next to a guy that was hiring, sent me a beautiful email the next day. And I think it was at that point I thought, this is really great. I can see some real value in this for, even for myself. I got to meet a whole bunch of new people. I got to learn the same things they did. I got to learned how to do some interesting things. A couple of years after I started that group, I started doing a mini 2-day conference of my own. And I got to learn how to put up pipe and drape. How many people know how to put up pipe and drape?
Yeah, I wouldn't.
Yeah. But, and every subsequent year, every subsequent meeting, you start seeing, start seeing when they see a tip that they'd never understood before, or, a guy or somebody does a really, really good presentation and the people in the room actually applaud. You don't really, engineers are typically kind of introverted. But get them all in a room talking about common things and teaching each other things. The engineers start to open up a little bit.
I got to experience that firsthand when I traveled out to Seattle to help present at Eric Beatty's user group.
Yep, the very first. Yep, the Seattle group, very first one.
Yeah, and we got a lady named Sophie Wong coming in, and she's a cosplayer. Like, she doesn't use SolidWorks, she uses Fusion, but what she does can be transferred across to SolidWorks.
Yeah.
So she was showing off how she makes like her costume pieces and how she actually forms it to her body. And the way she does is she wraps her body in cling film, then covers that in duct tape, cuts it off, lays it out flat. She's got her flat patterns. She then scans that in using a paper scanner and traces it with a sketch feature, creates that to then laser cut those out of foam, and it perfectly fits to her body. Next to me was an aeronautical engineer, literally out loud going, "Wow, this is incredible." Mm-hmm. He was blown away because he had never thought of using these tools in the way that she was.
And and that's the great thing. You talk about the community and the community as a whole. What we're not really talking about the SolidWorks community or the Onshape community or the Fusion community. We're talking about the engineering community, the CAD community, if you will. And there's so many things that we can all teach each other. A lot of the CAD systems have very, very, very similar commands. So sometimes just those little tips. The ones that you don't learn in training, the ones that you kind of pick up as you're going along. Sometimes those tips can actually cross CAD systems.
Yeah, even the workflow is...
Exactly. And you know what? You can also talk to people in a very CAD agnostic way, if you will, and still learn a lot of things. Our Innovators Insider podcast, for example, we had Ed Eaton on. One of our episodes to talk about surfacing, his approach to surfacing, his approach to industrial design. Too Tall Toby, was happy to come on the show and talk about speed modeling, and we got some tips on how to do that. And we didn't talk about Onshape, we didn't talk about Solid, we talked about CAD, we talked about engineering, and I think that's a good thing. That's good for everybody. Yeah,
Toby's kind of platform is perfect to anybody with any design tool can create and compete. It doesn't have to be just a SolidWorks user.
Yep. So I see a question from Brandon Walters there. How to get the Makers Edition to work? I don't know that Onshape has what we call a Makers Edition, so if that's a SolidWorks question, I have no idea.
The new SolidWorks Maker Edition that they've brought out is quite difficult to get working, and I've seen a lot of people complaining about how it's so difficult just to install.
Yeah.
Hopefully they'll get it sorted.
I won't get into the whole no installation thing, cloud-based. I won't mention that. There is a question, though, that I can answer. John Matrician, John Flatswagen is safe, still in his frame, and he is packed away in a what would you call it? Dust-resistant, air-resistant package with a lot of my other memories from those days. So. For
those that don't know, do you want to tell them what Flat Richard is?
Okay. Well, I guess it's actually Flatswagen is what it's called. So several years ago, I had my teeth removed. And here's my, PSA. Go to your dentist once a year, brush your teeth, take really good care of them because you don't want to lose them. So I ended up with dentures. But before I could get the dentures, I had to be without teeth for 4 months. So attending user group meetings, while it was still possible, it really wasn't something that I wanted to do, and I really didn't want to make people have to look at me with no teeth. So, I took 4 months off from traveling. Well, during that time, John Matrician got together with his family, and they created something called Flat Swuggen. It's modeled after an old school project called Flat Stanley, where the kids would create a Flat Stanley, just a piece of paper, a 2D object, and then mail him around the world to different places. And the recipients would get Flat Stanley, would take some pictures at landmarks and things like that. I was here at the Arc de Triomphe and things like that. And, eventually it would work its way back to the student that started that. So John did something very similar, but with the user groups. And Flat Swuggen ended up traveling. My gosh, I apologize, John. I can't remember all the details, but to more than 35 or 40 user groups, to like 3 different continents. People took pictures. The user group leaders took pictures. They were just fantastic. I'm gonna start crying about this again. It was like one of the highlights of my career that they would go to all that trouble. Every single one of those user group leaders would go to all of that trouble to take these pictures, and at the end of it, they gathered all these up and presented me at SOLIDWORKS World with this beautiful binder with all of the pictures printed out in it, and the places that he went, the people that Flat Swuggen got to see. Like I say, I mean, there were 2 things that happened in my career that really made me just bawl like a baby. That was one of them, and there's a King Richard story that if we have time I can tell that one as well. But so I still have the notebook and Flat Swuggen. I'm going to take very, very good care of that. I pull it out probably once every couple of years just to peruse it myself, and if somebody shows an interest in seeing it, I'll pull it out then. But I try to keep that as safe as possible. So
I remember I think that was the first like big user group summit that I went to. And they presented that, and that really showed me really how the user group community just work together as their own community, and they kind of helping each other out. And it really, for those that are worried about starting their own user group, if they're not going to get the support, that shows they're going to support each other. They help each other out.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I guess what it boils down to is, when you work with people like this, you spend time with people like this, you support people like this, you're in regular contact with them. You go to these conferences, you go out on party night, you go out on, offsite event night, and then you go to after party night, and these people become your friends. I mean, they're not just customers, they're not just users anymore. They're your friends, and you start talking about things outside of work, and you get to know some of these people. There are a whole bunch of people I still stay in touch with from the old days, and will for the rest of my life. So,
I mean, for myself and Jonny, going to all these events, the best thing that we get out of it is networking and chatting. And someone says, I really want to try and do this, and be like, I know the perfect person that can help creating those connections. So when the pandemic hit and all these conferences just got shut down and all that, Jonny and I had to figure out a way to still do this. So we actually created a thing called the Hallway Hangouts, where we had a Zoom meeting kind of like this, open up live, but we also live streamed it onto YouTube so that anybody from whatever office they're sitting at could either jump into the Zoom call and chat in the conversation between the sessions, or they can sit in the chat and lurk and listen. And it was quite successful. We did it again for 3D Experience World last year, and we raised close to $2,000 for Magic Wheelchair, and we live streamed for about 28 hours in total over 3 days.
Wow, that's excellent. The pandemic,
that was a lot of fun.
The pandemic really did a number on the community as a whole. It really wrecked a lot of things. When I came here to Onshape and started the Onshape User Group Network, we had 37 groups form within the first year, and all of those groups had their meetings. Some of them had 2 or 3 meetings altogether, and then I was actually in Southern California the day before, I guess the day before the big announcement, right? So I had attended a meeting in Los Angeles and was due to drive down the next day to San Diego. And, then the word started coming out. And so we decided to cancel that meeting in San Diego. And my flight the next day had already been canceled. And they were trying to rebook me. Who knows when I was going to get on a flight. So I went over to Avis, I rented a car, and I drove the 5.5 hours to Las Vegas and just came home. And then, like everybody else, just hunkered down for a year. We immediately went to some online user group meetings just to make sure that we still had the continuity in the community and staying in touch with our group leaders. I fully anticipated at some point that we would go back to live meetings. Didn't think I was one of those people that really thought the pandemic would be over within a couple of months. I guess I didn't see the seriousness of it at first. And then I had a long conversation with John Herstick, and we decided, things are going to change. This is really going to change things. Let's go to 100% online, and let's just get some people excited about that. We'll put together an advisory board. We'll get enough hosts for these meetings. And now we run a meeting at least every 2 weeks, what we call the professional user groups. And then we have, I wouldn't call them niche groups, you will, but kind of side groups like the Women Who CAD that I mentioned. That's an Onshape user group. They meet quarterly.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yep. And then we also have an education group that meets quarterly as well, and that's more focused towards the students and the actual educators that are teaching Onshape these days. So, it's working out really well. We're getting some good folks. We're getting some great presentations. I do miss shaking people's hands. I miss the side conversations that you can have at a live meeting. I miss sharing food with people. I really kind of got tired of pizza after all those years, but every now and
you
then,
want it.
it's like, wow, I sure miss pizza at a user group meeting. But I think that's the future. I think there will be some live events for Onshape users in the future. I don't think we'll ever go back to the model of, city-based user groups at this point. I think we've been successful enough with the online groups. We're able to do this all over the world without having any physical needs, no meeting room needs, things like that. While I wasn't a fan of online user groups initially when we started, we had to do it. We were forced to do it. I've come to appreciate them a little bit and appreciate the ease in which the meetings can be scheduled and the meetings can be run. So, I think we're going to go ahead with these meetings. We may pull out some local events here and there, but for now we're going to stay 100% online with that.
Yeah, when leading up to a few months before the pandemic, there was a lot of discussion about trying virtual meetings and that, and a lot of people were against it. And the pandemic forced us into that virtual world, and a lot of people did see the benefit. I absolutely love them. Yeah. Well, because I can run more meetings per year.
Sure.
Yep.
If I throw in-person meetings in between them, and it means that I can get people to present from all around the world, and I don't have to restrict it to just London. Anybody can join, and even with 3D Experience World going virtual and having it free and anybody can access it, a whole larger group of people suddenly realized what the user group network is, and that they could join up and do it themselves. And then we've seen this big explosion in other parts of the world outside of the States of new user groups.
Yep, and you're going to see. You're going to see that because of the training or learning that you're going to get at these user group meetings. The networking portion of it's going to be a little bit tougher to do online, obviously. Like I say, you're not going to be able to have those side conversations. In fact, other than kind of group conversations, which if you've been to a lot of online user group meetings, that a couple of people kind of dominate those online discussions. Those kind of free for all things. But there's the Q&A. You get some great presentations. The meetings can be recorded, so it's easy to go back and refer to something that you might have forgotten. There are a lot of benefits. They're probably going to take a lot longer to build those personal relationships, but can probably still be done in some fashion. So.
Yeah. Yep. It could be interesting to even experiment, and I've been looking to do it, is do hybrid. So you have your presentation in person, but you live stream the presentation onto Zoom or something like that, so people can participate. They just miss out on the networking aspect.
Hey, looks like my co-host showed up. Michael LaFleche is here.
Michael.
Yep. SOLIDWORKS folks will remember him from the TriMac days, I think. TriMac, I hope.
He agrees you have the best smile in CAD.
I wish I could say it was mine. It's artificial, but I like it.
So, I've always thought of, with access to user groups that anybody can join online, access to YouTube, ease of access to 3D printers, and now starting to get easy access to design tools, that I always feel like this new generation of designers and creators are going to not going to get inspired through university, but more from as a young age through YouTube and that stuff, and they're going to come from a whole different angle. than traditionally trained people.
Yep, I agree. When I started my career, YouTube wasn't, there really wasn't anywhere to go to kind of find the information. I mean, library, that was it. Or learning on the job. I mean, mentored by senior engineers, mentored by manufacturing people and such. And even when when the internet came around and the information was available in things like forums, and it was very, I guess I wouldn't call it bland, but just kind of basic. Somebody would ask a question, somebody would answer the question, and that's kind of how you got your information, or you could read blog posts, things like that. With YouTube, you're starting to see, well, a good example is Joel Telling, the 3D printing nerd, right?
Yeah.
So you're starting to see these, I guess you'd call them performances. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean, the way they're getting this information across is something that maybe doesn't necessarily appeal to the older generation, but the younger generation eats it up, right? The different kinds of projects that he works on, things like the MCU. I mean, everybody's creating, Thor's hammer and they're creating these stories around it, which are fascinating and interesting and educating at the same time. And I think that's why the kids are drawn to that kind of learning, as opposed to the very dry going to the forums, asking a question kind of thing. And I think you're right. I think more and more they're going to YouTube for their information.
I've seen it where like people have made like cosplay items and props and that stuff in their garage.
Yeah,
learning from YouTube videos and that stuff, and now they professionally making props for movies and that.
I think it has a lot to do with trying to convince kids that engineering is cool, right? I mean, we've always kind of had that in engineering and manufacturing. And now what they're seeing is it can be fun. I mean, it's not their grandfather's manufacturing. It's not their grandfather's, just standing at a CNC machine day, all day long. There's a whole lot more to it.
Yeah.
And I think, hopefully that will drive more kids to engineering.
I mean, if the way I always thought about it, I would watch shows on Discovery Channel. I see them CNCing stuff out of metal and that stuff, and using all these big engineering machines to create things. That was all very unreachable, and in order to get there, you had to study your way. Where, for example, Brandon, who's in the chat, he's got a CNC machine that he built himself in his garage, and he's got a 3D printer on his desk. All these tools to kind of create anything he wants, and he's got the design software to create what he wants.
Yep.
And it's just that ease of access has really changed, and I think it's going to change a lot more.
Oh, I agree. Absolutely agree. I mean, things can only get better from here. So,
I just wish I had access to all that kind of stuff.
I can't remember what the context was. I think we were talking on one of our podcast episodes, and somebody talked about what they had in high school as far as their STEM classes or their tech classes. They were talking about, I had a 386 computer or a 486 computer. My claim to fame was I had a drafting board. So.
Yeah, but when I started learning design on that, it started on a drafting board because I think I was in the phase where everything wasn't all 3D. It was kind of, you have to learn how to understand a drawing.
Yep.
To understand CAD.
Yeah, and I was in an era where 3D wasn't really used other than for isometric, view kind of purposes. Everything was 2D drawings. In fact, I took 2 classes of mechanical drawing each year in high school. So 4 times 2, 8 classes of mechanical drawing. I had a great instructor. He was very, very open-minded about things like that. You're supposed to pick 2 different electives, but he went along with the whole thing. And I learned an awful lot. I could create a work of art, on this big piece of paper that a lot of people couldn't do. And it was just fun. I liked taking things apart and seeing how they worked. I didn't like putting things back together. I loved the drafting aspect. I loved the design aspect of it, but I didn't like really so much the build aspect of it. I didn't really like getting my hands dirty. So, mechanical drafting worked out perfectly for me because then I transitioned. I got a job as a trainee as an 18-year-old right out of high school. I knew back then college was never going to be an option for me. It wasn't something that my family could do. And I was lucky enough to get that drafting job. And, as an 18-year-old, first of all, you're given all the chores that nobody wants to do. And you're usually the first one to volunteer for stuff that maybe somebody doesn't want to do. I learned printed circuit board design that first year out of high school because none of the other draftsmen wanted to bother to learn it. So they sent me to a 6-week class. I learned how to do printed circuit board design and spent the next year face down on a light table, with red and blue pencils doing puzzles, basically.
You've got to take every opportunity that's out there, and even though it might not be something that you use every day,
right?
You can be that guy that they'll go to.
Well, and it was important to learn. I mean, learning how to create a good mechanical drawing was just my first step in learning how to, how to design an enclosure, for instance, around existing geometry and things like that. So you learn a lot just drawing those plans up and seeing, taking them from a book, from a 3D section, and creating those 2D layouts. So.
I've always kind of enjoyed having an understanding of all the little bits instead of just focusing all the way down.
Yep.
One alley, because then you can have conversations with everybody.
Absolutely. That's, and I've said this before, the process is what gave me my so-called emotional paycheck, not the final product. The final product was great. I'm glad it went together, and I'm glad it was, got sold and shipped out the door. But now I want to go back and start on the next project, and I want to, I want to go through the specifications, and I want to start the CAD design, and I want to start the drawings. And that was just my preference,
I mean, Jonny, you don't use it much design tools in your day job now anymore.
Not now. I used to every day, but changed role, and now I use SolidWorks maybe an hour a week.
Yeah. So, Jonny, I'm in the same boat. I mean, I took I went through the learning curve with Onshape. In fact, that's kind of how I got started with the company. Was I reached out to an old friend for a piece of software that I wanted to use to design my tiny house, and first place I looked obviously was Onshape. And, it was a couple of weeks later we got to talking and all of a sudden here I am and now working for the company. So, I got to work on the tiny house a little bit, but that's some pretty basic stuff. I still have a lot to learn with Onshape, but I'm learning more every day and I'm paying attention at the user group meetings too. So.
How many tips and tricks have you accumulated to do your own presentation?
Well, and I'm about to admit something that probably everybody already knows. So back in the day when I was doing my tips and tricks presentation, I would say 90% of those tips were stuff that I had seen other people do or that I stole from other folks and just really kind of put them together in what I thought was a fun kind of real quick bang presentation. I never, even with my work with my CAD packages, I was always the guy that kind of followed the rules. I didn't really dig into any of the software as much as I probably should have. So I had a particular set of things that I needed to do. I knew how to access and use the tools that I was doing that. So, a good example is surfacing. Oh my goodness. I never had the occasion in 10 years of design to do surfacing because I was doing mechanical, machine design. And then, I gave it a try one day and it just turned out to be a nightmare. I think some people will remember my presentation on how I did not learn surfacing. So.
I mean, like Betty does, every day she uploads a tip or a trick. Something that's usually very simple, like using the S key, which I still don't use.
Yep.
She says all those notes, all that is just notes that she takes from different user group meetings and things, writes them all down, and then puts them onto a computer, and then every day she just releases a tip that she learns.
Yep.
Thursdays, as John Matrician says. Every Thursday.
Exactly. So I actually did find a couple of Onshape tips that I was able to show. And I think if Michael's still on, he'll remember one of them that I did show. And even he hadn't seen that one. So I thought that was pretty good. But I'm not yet to the point where I feel comfortable doing the presentations at the user group meeting. So I'm kind of the coordinator. I sit back and I try to learn as much as I can. Yeah. And I'll get there eventually. I'll put together, I'll steal enough tips and tricks to put together a presentation someday and start doing that. But for now, I rely on other people to do that.
I mean, I always find that user-created content and that kind of stuff you're going to learn a lot more from it than, speak the devil, Betty Baker's in there
Hey, Betty.
as well. Having that user-led content, you're going to learn a lot more because these are people that are using it day to day.
Exactly.
They're not trying to advertise it, and they're trying to find the shortcuts and the quicker way of doing things.
Yep, you nailed it right on the head there, because when you get somebody from the company, whether it's somebody from the company directly or a reseller, they're trained to show you how to do things in what the company or the reseller has decided is the most efficient way to do that. And in most cases it probably is, but there are those little subtleties, and especially if it doesn't match your workflow exactly, and you have to come and find some way around that, then sharing that with other people, and they look at that and they go, I didn't know you could do that. I'm going to go try that at my company. So yeah, you're right. I mean, user presentations are always the highest rated at any of these kinds of meetings. So.
I mean, at Slug Me 6, the Slug Me last year, where they did 24 hours of user group presentations, and in between they had these keystone presentations of just overall designing a car using the 3D Experience platform. Out of all the 3D Experience platform presentations that we've seen at World or corporate, that was the best showcase of it, because it was created by people that were really passionate about what they were creating, as opposed to reading off a script. And I still believe that's, if anybody's looking for that kind of tool, I always point them into those videos. Be like, that's what you're looking for.
We, Onshape has a public document area. And so people can come up and share some of their documents publicly with everybody. And we see some really good examples there. And then we also go out and we actually look for, ask folks, hey, do you have something really cool that you'd like to show off? And, we call that our model of the week. And we put that out, Onshape puts that out. And Michael and I use that on the podcast occasionally as well. And that's a great way to see other people's work and how they're putting stuff together, because, we make these models public. You can make a copy of it. And you can go in and you can traverse the feature trees, and you can, look at the mating schemes and structures and how things were built. And you can learn an awful lot from other people's models. So,
yeah, I've always found that jumping into GrabCAD and downloading someone's model and actually going through their feature tree and seeing their workflow, I learned a lot that way, to see how they went from point A to point B. Because I always find like 80% of a design problem is, where do you start?
Exactly. Well, and that's the reason I really failed in my attempt to learn surfacing, is that I restricted myself to not looking at other people's models because I didn't want to really copy things. And, in hindsight, that was a really, really bad decision. I should have gone into other people's models to see how they were doing things, not to copy how they were doing, but to physically watch and see how they were doing things. So I'll never make that mistake again.
And with YouTube and Twitch now, you can actually watch people even live model, live design. Which is always a fun way to learn. That's how I learned. Seeing how everybody went from point A to point B. Where is it? Yeah, GrabCAD. So what inspired you to start the Innovations Inside podcast?
There wasn't... there's not a great story behind it. Oh gosh, I'm going to forget her title, and I don't want to, so I won't even mention her name. But let's just say one of our managers said, "Hey, you want to do a podcast?" And Michael and I said, "Yeah, sure." And so we did, and we did that first episode. Just kind of told our stories, where we came from, how we got to where we are. It turns out Michael and I have had very similar journeys, and mine started a little bit earlier than his did, but we both ended up in the same place here. And we enjoyed it so much. We had such a great time. And it turned out to, I was really nervous at first. I'd never done a podcast before, but it turned out to be pretty simple to do. And now we've got, I think we just recorded our 25th episode, or we're getting ready to record our 25th
Very
episode.
Nice.
We've managed to have some great guests. We had Terry Wohlers, from 3D printing. I mean, Terry is the de facto voice when it comes to 3D printing in the world, and has been for the last 20 years. We got to interview the BattleBots team Ghost Raptor. So Onshape sponsored a BattleBot this year, Ghost Raptor, and the championship was held here in Las Vegas. So I got to be the point man for that whole project there, and I got to go over and visit the team in the pits and watch them putting together some stuff. And I got to watch 4 hours of taping, so I got to watch 4 hours of the matches, and got to see unfortunately, I got to see Ghost Raptor get just absolutely obliterated in their second match. If you ever get a chance, if you get a chance to watch that, I remember watching it at the time on TV. You know, I mean, you don't get the same effect that you get on TV that you do live. And the hosts, just both of them at the same time, went, "Whoa, wow, that might be the disaster of the year," or something to that effect, and it really was. And I was watching that match live, and I saw it, and oh goodness, one of the team members kind of came over to the stands afterwards, and I said, "People are going to remember that." And she just shook her head and said, "Oh yeah." So.
I mean, like BattleBots is a perfect example of like in South Africa, BattleBots. You never watched it, you never saw it. You didn't have YouTube to watch it. So what my grandmother used to do here in England is she would record every episode on a VHS, post it to me in South Africa, and I'll go and binge watch them off like that. It's the old Netflix.
Yep. I started watching years and years ago. I don't know, some of your listeners will remember Dan Bovenich, Ditto Dan from the early days, and he had a robot. I think it was called F1, and he participated. But I want to say back in that like the early 2000s, 2004, 2005 time frame kind of thing. I think SolidWorks probably sponsored that robot as well. So they've been around for a long time, and I kind of forgot about it for a long time. And then this opportunity came up, and I watched the entire season. I mean, it's just an awesome television show, and even cooler live. I mean, you don't get a scale really for how big these machines are on TV, but when you're standing next to these things, weigh 250 pounds. And, in some points they're throwing them 8, 10, 12 feet in the air. It's just an awesome spectacle. So, and you know what? I also got to meet a great person. Her name is Anouk Whiprecht. If you're familiar with the spider dress at all, and if you're not, certainly go out and Google that. So I got to meet Anouk. She is a fashion tech designer. And she's actually working with Onshape right now to create to do her latest creation. So if you ever get a chance to get Anouk on the show, that'd be a pretty good interview for you guys too. She's quite a fashion designer and very technological. Yep, there's the spider dress there. So what that dress does, it actually has sensors built into it. If somebody gets too close to the wearer, it sends out those spikes as kind of a, hey, this is my personal zone right here. You can't get past it.
That's pretty metal.
Yep. She's got several other versions. She's got a dress that smokes for the same reason, sends out a little bill of smoke. Just an incredible woman and some incredible designs. And, just really happy to have met her.
And obviously it's all 3D printed. So, I mean,
Yep.
Kind of organic designs that you couldn't get with any other manufacturing process.
Yep. Some cool stuff. Yep.
I wish I had that kind of skill. Imagine trying to surface that in SolidWorks or.
Well, about the only way I might be able to reproduce something like that is if you gave me a block of clay, and in 3 or 4 days.
Yeah, I really, it fascinates me when people can create stuff like that. Yep. You think you're pretty good, and you see that knocks you down a peg, keeps you humble.
Well, I'm always fascinated with industrial designers, consumer product designers, things like that. Because, like I say, I mean, I don't have a left side brain, and my entire career was spent working on things like cranes and industrial machinery and electronic scales, and lots of right angles, lots of sheet metal, very little plastic, very little shape. So.
I still find those kind of models fascinating, seeing like a whole crane built in SolidWorks, thousands of parts in an assembly. And it's just, for me, it's kind of, where do you start?
Yeah.
Like, how do you start a model like that?
Yep.
Jonny knows I don't like assemblies.
Oh, no, honestly, if you ever open a Kirby model, he's just in for a bad time. It's all just bodies on top of bodies on top of bodies.
Lots of fixed signs in the feature tree.
Yeah.
No, my feature tree is generally clean. It's just I just model with just bodies and then merge
Yeah.
them and then separate them, merge them.
Whereas, yeah, my engineering head goes, right, I'll model every bolt and I'll put it in one big assembly, and then I can take it right back down. But Kirby just goes, nope, it all goes in one part file.
You need to take a look at Onshape, Kirby. I think you would really appreciate the part studios. In fact, I know you would.
I mean, I literally just signed up onto Onshape.
Outstanding. let me know when you want to come on our podcast and talk about how great it was.
See all the things I can make. I mean, one thing I find fascinating is that when it comes to designing things, there's no wrong way to do it.
Yeah.
And the best analogy I've always found with this is with Lego, because you've got your Lego, I've got some Lego. Where's your Lego, Johnny? Okay, you got some. Get mad.
Oh, yeah, don't worry.
But if you take 100 people and give them 100 Lego blocks each, and you say to them, make a duck,
Yeah.
you're going to have 100 ducks, but every duck's going to be different.
Yep.
It's the same thing with design. It's always...
Exactly. So you noticed my my Lego back here.
You said you had an interesting story about that.
Yeah, if we have time, I'd love to tell it. So the Empire State Building has always been my favorite building, even as a small child. I was just somehow fascinated with the Empire State Building. Never got a chance to visit it. I had one chance. I was doing some meetings and I was driving from New Jersey to Brooklyn, and Googled a path to go right past the building. I was going to stop. I was finally going to go see my favorite building. And be done with that. And what I didn't count on was the traffic in Manhattan and the parking in Manhattan. And so I really couldn't find, I couldn't find a place to park that was anywhere close to the building. And I was running out of time. So, I circled the block a couple of times and finally just kind of stuck my hand out of the window and took a picture of the building with my phone. So moving on many, many years later, I was never a Lego person. So when I was young, I started with Lincoln Logs and Tinker Toys. And then I went into erector sets, which I thought were really, really cool. And from there, I started doing Revell models. So, car models. I remember putting together the visible V8, and it actually had a visible chassis that went with it. You can put them both together. You can put the engine in the chassis, and you can actually make that thing work. Take some batteries, pistons go up and down, wheels go around, things like that. So I never really got into Legos at all. So a couple of years ago, a friend sent me what she assumed was a gag gift. She sent me the Lego Friends set, right? I was a big fan of the television show Friends, the series Friends.
I've got one up there somewhere.
Yeah, and she knew that. And so I opened the box and I said, okay, I'm going to put this together. And I sat down. I just, from start to finish, I just put that thing together.
It's a fun set.
Probably took me 5 or 6 hours to do. And I had so much fun that as soon as I was done with that and found a place for it on my shelf, I went over to Amazon and looked up like City Skyline kind of thing. So I bought a couple of City Skyline Lego sets, and they were here, the next day because it's Amazon. And I put those two together. Those were smaller ones. It only took me a couple hours. Then I found out there was a Lego store here in town in Las Vegas. And so I went over to the Lego store, and I was just blown away. So that's where I picked up my Empire State Building. That one took quite a while to put together. That's a lot of pieces, and a lot of very similar pieces, the same kind of thing.
Yeah, a lot of repetitiveness.
Yep. But again, I enjoyed it so much. I had so much fun with it that I actually went back to the Lego store with the intention of buying something else. I didn't know what at the time. And I was standing in front of the Roman Colosseum, and it was $700. And that's when the switch went off in my mind. Richard, you're getting obsessed with this. You just need to stop. And so I walked out of the store. I did not buy that set. I walked out of the store. I came back. I took apart the two little City Skylines that I had, and I put them back in their box and actually gave them to a neighbor, told him, give them to your grandkids. I kept the Friends set because that was from a friend, and I kept the Empire State Building because I love the Empire State Building, and I've decided to use it as my background from now on. So that's
it works well. I've got up here, taking a ride. I've got my cities up there.
Yep.
But that's one of the big $700 sets. That's also another big.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Kirby, I was almost there. But I'm getting towards the end of my career now, and it's time to start putting some money aside for for retirement. And I can't be spending $600 a month on Legos.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, with this set, what I've decided doing is building my own kind of like Hoth base that the AT-AT's crushing.
I like
So
it.
it's not just buying the set; it's getting all the other pieces and building my own kind of thing. It's the first time I'm doing that, and it's quite
Sounds
fun.
like an addiction.
Yep. Nice.
There's user groups for it.
Yep. I am never hesitant to admit that I am a fan of all 9 Star Wars movies. I thought they
Good.
were all just fine. I mean, just great.
Have you watched any of the series?
I have. Let's see. No, I have not yet. I tried to watch Loki. I couldn't do it. The whole show, the whole premise kind of weirded me out. I like Loki as the evil guy on Earth fighting Thor. I do plan to watch Obi-Wan. I just haven't. Typically I wait to binge these things. I don't like to wait a week in between seasons, or in between shows. So I'll wait till they're all posted and just watch them all at once.
Like Mandalorian ties nicely in, like very nicely towards the end into the main stories. Obviously, Obi-Wan gives his character some closure, which I think they did very, very well.
I saw Solo, didn't care for it. Rogue One was, I thought, a very good movie until the end, because I wasn't enough of a super fan to put the whole thing together at the beginning of the movie. So when they all die at the end, that made me quite sad. I don't like movies where the heroes die in the end, but
I love those kind of movies because that's going against the rules of film.
And I guess I'm more of a guy that likes the rules of film. In fact, some of my favorite films, in fact, my favorite all-time film, you guys are going to laugh at this one, is from 1938, and that's The Adventures of Robin Hood with Errol Flynn and Olivia de Havilland. I mean, it's the campiest movie ever. Errol Flynn was a cool guy, probably not in person, but on the screen, he was a really cool guy. And I love those old movies. Every 4th of July, I watch Yankee Doodle Dandy with Jimmy Cagney. If you've never seen that, you're missing out on one of the greatest movies of all time.
It's like Avengers Infinity War when they just kill them all off.
Yeah, I had a hard time with the last few. The idea of Iron Man, are we giving away spoilers here? I guess it's probably everybody by now.
It's fair game.
3 years.
Yeah. The whole snap of the fingers, everybody goes away. I kind of saw the setup there, so I was pretty sure at least most of them would be back. And then you bring them all back, and then you kill one of them off. I'm sorry.
It's all about love and peace.
Yep. But I tell you what, I just watched Captain Marvel again last night. That one is actually turning out to maybe be my favorite MCU movie.
Captain Marvel, it's actually not too bad.
Yeah.
It had a lot of hate leading up to it.
Yeah. Well, a lot of I want to say kind of inflection, maybe. I don't know if I want to classify it as hate. I think there was a lot of misunderstanding, and I was glad to see how it turned out. And I love movies with powerful women. I really do. I think they're awesome. I think Gal Gadot made a fantastic Wonder Woman. The scene where she leapfrogs up and busts through the church steeple with that shield is one of the most exciting scenes I've ever seen on screen. I mean, that's just something else. So.
I haven't watched much of the DC stuff. I've just big Marvel fan.
Yeah, I'm not as big a DC fan. I enjoyed Justice League. I thought that was okay, but it's not one that I'll watch over and over again, like I do some of the Marvel movies. I enjoyed Wonder Woman very much. Wonder Woman 2, not so much. But yeah, I'm more of a Marvel fan than I am DC. Mm-hmm.
I enjoy the kind of lightheartedness of all the MCU stuff.
Thor is as played by Hemsworth is probably one of my favorite characters in movies ever.
Have you watched the new one?
No, and no giveaways, please. I have not seen that one yet. I'm waiting. There's actually a real live drive-in theater here in Las Vegas. So I'm just waiting. I'm going to actually wait until it cools down a little bit so I can go watch it on the big screen at the drive-in.
So I mean, just meant cooling down. We're hoping that the UK cools down pretty soon because we're on fire at the moment. Yesterday, I'm going to have to convert it into freedom degrees.
Freedom height.
So yesterday, the UK reached 104 to 105 for the first time ever.
Wow.
So yeah, we're melting. I don't think it got that hot up north for you, Jonny.
That's what, 40, 43, 44?
41.
41. Okay, it's 42 right now in Las Vegas.
It's just another day.
But like I say, with the air conditioning, we're all very comfortable here.
Yeah, you guys are more set up for it than we are.
Yep.
We had massive wildfires all over the place because of it yesterday.
Yep.
One of them was actually about 2 miles down the road from me.
Yep, we've got some fires burning over here too. Not in our area, but in some of the other western states. So, yep, the earth's on fire.
You're in Vegas, and one thing that Mike Puckett explained to us, kind of Vegas during the pandemic was kind of strange how the locals took over the city.
I don't know if I saw that. So I pretty much hunkered down while the casinos were closed. So, I mean, half the reason I moved out here was to play poker at the casinos. Fortunately, we also have online poker here, so I was able to continue with poker. The casinos were closed down for about 7 months. And then they opened up, and we had the mask mandates. And I wasn't, I went a couple of times. They also had the plexiglass in between every seat at the table. They were wiping down every single surface every 3 minutes. They had hand sanitizer. It just wasn't a comfortable experience anymore.
No.
So I stuck around, again, I kind of just hunkered down at home. So I didn't really see a lot of what went on in the city. What ended up happening, though, after the casinos opened back up and people started getting stimulus money, and, they had been cooped up all this time, and Las Vegas is a great place to go and spend money. So we had a huge influx of tourists actually come in. Mostly, from surrounding areas, Phoenix, Los Angeles, places like that. So, the casinos were able to at least recover some of their money. They weren't making as much as they were. But, at least for me as a local, like I say, I stayed away from the crowds. I really didn't want to catch COVID. Because, I'm 62 years old. I've been smoking cigarettes for the last 20 years. It just seemed like the kind of thing that would kill me. So I did my best to not. Now that I look back, for 2.5 years later, I never caught it. I'm vaccinated, boosted, all that good stuff. I haven't been wearing a mask now for a couple of years. I've been playing poker. They say that cases are up, but for some reason, I seem to think that my immune system is keeping me away from this thing. I only ever had the flu, the actual, influenza once in my life. And that was actually at a conference. I remembered it was 2005. And that's after, years of shaking hands at meetings and, literally hundreds of hands over the course of a week, and never really got that sick. So, I like to think that I have a pretty good immune system against this thing. I'm going to keep, if they recommend another booster in the fall, I'll go get that. I trust medicine. But I think I'm going to be pretty safe through this, and I'm going to get out and start doing more things. So.
Yeah. We were in February, we were in Nashville, partying away with everybody in crowds, shaking hands, all that stuff. Yeah. A few weeks later, we just isolating, and that was kind of going from one extreme to another.
Well, and there, some places are starting to bring back masks here. The school district down in the Southern California area has got a mask mandate for school kids now, and some of the counties down there are thinking about instituting the inside mask mandates again. So I don't see that happening here in Nevada. I think, they say the cases are up a little bit in Clark County, but that's to be expected. That's where all the casinos and all the people are. So that's where you're going to get transmission. So, but like I say, I think I'll be pretty safe. And, like I said, I'll still be as careful as I can. I've always been a good hand washer, so it's not an issue.
It's good to see you still having a good time, still living your best life, still doing user groups.
Yep. Like I say, I'm getting to the end. I can see, I actually hit minimum retirement age this year, which is 62 here in the U.S. It's a huge hit on your benefits if you retire early, so I'm not planning on doing that. But I can see that, I can see the horizon. I fully plan to stay somehow involved in the CAD community, whether that's just reading through things, following people on social media. I'm really enjoying doing the podcast with Michael, but who knows, maybe after I retire, maybe I'll, do one on my own. Having a lot of fun, so we'll see how that goes. But I'm enjoying life. I'm enjoying what I'm doing for a living, and I really enjoyed being here with you guys today. So I want to thank you for having me.
I'm super happy, super glad that you've joined us tonight. And surprised I didn't pop this up earlier. I forget these
And
things.
Yep. And if you don't mind, before we go, I'd just like to say hi to all the SolidWorks folks out there that I worked with over the years. I miss you guys. I keep in touch with some of you, but some of you I don't. And I'll always remember all of you, and I'll remember you fondly. So thank you all for the memories, and thank you for the wonderful support that you've given me through the years.
That's awesome. Thank you for joining us.
Yep,
It's going to do our little wrap up thing, just plugging our socials. If you want to follow Richard, you're mostly on Twitter, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
The user group guy. Fairly easy to find there, and he shares all the different things he's busy with there. If you want to follow me, I'm at KJ Designs 365.
If you want to follow me, at Castle Run Creations.
If you want to follow us on Instagram, we're at thecorepodcast.contact. On Facebook, we are at the Core Podcast, where the O is a 0. That's actually the wrong one. I've got to update the other one. On Twitter, we are the Core Podcast, and here on YouTube, we are the Core Podcast. So just a little story there. We decided on the name before we checked domain names.
That's the underscores, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
We're trying to get them all there. But yes, thank you everybody that's joined us tonight. Hope you've enjoyed listening to Richard, and I absolutely love to have you back again at some point.
Hey, I'd love
catching
to be here.
up again about user groups and that.
No problem.
It's been fantastic. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye.
Bye.